Hello again, everyone. It's good to have you with us for this event. It figures to be an exceptional one that doesn't need any build-up.
Are you ready?
Don't ever give up. Don't ever stop fighting.
This is the
Athletes, take your mark. Get set. It's time for the Addict II Athlete Podcast. Hey, everybody out there, Coach Blue Robinson here. Hey, thanks so much for all you're doing, for downloading, sharing, and subscribing to this podcast. Greatly appreciate you guys doing so. As always, we'd love to have you jump on addict2athlete.org. You'll find all kinds of content, our backlog podcasts, our information on the team, the program, a lot of good tips on there about recovery and how to start this process, but really just kind of as a resource that you could use to help anyone that might be struggling with mental health or addiction issues. That's addict2athlete.org. And again, as we approach this Christmas holiday season, I want to give thanks to everybody who's contributed to the Project ELF. We have done really well this year, and I want to thank everyone who's donated, anything from the coats and the clothing right down to monetary donations that has gone in to help individuals that are struggling this time of year with finances. And so thank you for all of our ELFs out there. It's been doing such a great job to help us fund this amazing program, the Project ELF. And for you families that are receiving this benefit, I want you to understand how amazing this team is to support not just your family, but also to make sure that you guys get your needs met. Hey, as always, again, we got some amazing things coming on the horizon. I want to turn your attentions to the website, specifically under our events tab. We'll be able to see all of our upcoming events for 2024. The Lake to Lake Relay, we have our Addict to Athlete Proxy Run, and we also have the No One Left Behind Half Marathon. All of that information can be found again under the resource tabs of events on the website. Athletes, today I got a great guest in studio. I'm excited. I get to say in studio because usually it's on Zoom or on Riverside, but we got our guest in studio today, and I'm kind of like blown away that it's taken this long to get you down here into this seat. But I want to welcome Mike Haws to the Addict Athlete Podcast, brother. It seems like you've been in this industry with me forever and a day, but welcome to the podcast. Introduce yourself to Team Addict to Athlete, and let's dive into this.
Blue Robinson. It's a privilege and an honor. I actually have goosebumps.
Oh, man.
I agree with you. It's long overdue. We've known each other for quite some time, the better part of 10 years.
Yeah.
In fact, when I first jumped into recovery, I remember you, an addict to athlete, and looking up to you and thinking, man, I got to get to know this guy. And then when I heard more about addict to athlete, I remember thinking, I got to get Addict to Athlete up here in Davis County in Farmington because of your mission, because of the energy, the camaraderie, the connection piece that I could really relate to is what resonated with me. So it's an honor to be here. I love your space down here. It's beautiful. The energy is uplifting and positive.
Oh, cool. Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
That means a lot, man. And likewise, brother, like just watching what you guys have created up there with the Red Barn. I remember when I was first introduced to you, I think it was Mary Jo that kind of said, hey, there's this guy that I need you to meet. And so it's funny how our names get tossed around through people, these connections that we make. And when I did finally get to meet you, we came up and we got to run a little event up there, and what an amazing experience that was. What a beautiful backdrop. And I remember you kind of forecasting what this program you had in mind would eventually look like. And back then it was a little red barn in a field, kind of in the middle of nowhere, just kind of like next to a little freeway. And I'm like, well, okay. But over the years, just watching like literally that seed that was planted grow into what you guys have created, it's been amazing, brother. But I remember sharing a little bit of an experience when we were up there, and I got to talk to your father and some of your family about your brother, and just this whole reason why you decided it was probably time to throw in the towel on the lifestyle of addiction and what we call on Addict to Athlete, erasing and replacing. Erase that old lifestyle and replacing it with something of greater value, which is what you've done for the community and the industry at large. Walk us through a little bit about those shifts in mindset. I mean, everyone has a story. I think stories have a power to inspire. But I'm more interested in towards the end of that journey and when you decided it was time to shift to create the Red Barn Academy. So I'm probably behind the curve because you guys have grown exponentially since then.
We've been very fortunate and very blessed, Blue. My story is very similar to a lot of stories in recovery. I found myself in a position where I needed help. I couldn't stop using. I had been to rehab multiple times. There had been interventions. There had been overdoses. And really, I think the culmination of my own personal recovery happened when my little brother, Dustin Haws, passed away. It was June 29th, 2012. It was a Friday morning, obviously unexpected. I was still active in my addiction, and my phone rang. It was my father. Michael, I need to tell you, the Davis County Sheriff's Department just left our home. They stopped by to tell us that they found your little brother dead in a hotel room.
Oh, man.
He was 21 years old. And as painful as that event was in my life and my family's life, the silver lining and the unintended consequences have just been tremendous. The outpouring of support and love when we lost Dustin, I will always remember the community that we lived in that rallied up around us. And then this idea of giving back and helping individuals like Dustin. Well, first, I needed to get sober myself. My recovery date is, I call it my new life date. Right. I like that. Trading up, erase and replace. Was about a month after Dustin passed away. Knock on wood. Yeah. That's the last time that I overdosed and went back into rehab again. I picked up one more DUI, one more arrest. And I came to this, the end of the rope for me, really is what it was, Blue. I had lost a best friend. I'd lost my little brother. Really, I felt like I was next unless something was going to change. Yeah. And that change was really this little red barn on the west side of Farmington. You're correct, Blue. It's out in the middle of nowhere. Yeah. It was a place where we would go as family and as kids and ride four-wheelers and run around and play out in the pastures. And it was always intended as a really an oasis or a safe haven to give back to Farmington City. It was to keep the farm in Farmington. So when Dustin passed away, my dad and I got together and we said, what can we do to help honor Dustin? What can we do to help give back to people that need some love and some support like Dustin? And that's really where Red Barn was born. AA saved my life, sponsees. And so we started to conduct AA meetings there at the farm. In one room, we would have AA, and then across the hall, we'd have Al-Anon. And it was brought to my attention real quickly that these individuals needed more support, not just a recovery meeting, not just a phone call or a support group, but actually a place to go and live, reside, learn life skills, reinvent themselves. Takes enough time away to develop those life skills so they can get back and become productive members of society. So really, like any good drug addict, when I got sober, I wanted to save the world. So I've got to go back and get my college degree. I went to the University of Utah and got a social work degree. As I was studying social work and reading about the continuums of care, I was reading about the biopsychosocial model. And at the very end, there was a small paragraph about therapeutic communities. Long-term, free, based on work, integrity. The words just jumped off the page. And I was reading about an organization in California called the Delancey Street Foundation. And I came out of class and I remember calling my father and saying, Dad, this is it. We got to go check this place out. So myself, one of our board members, and my dad jumped on an airplane and went to California and did what's called an immersion training and spent 3-4 days there studying the Delancey Street Foundation model with the goal to bring that model back to Utah, but to do it in a farm setting. And it was a little more complicated than just going down there and bringing it back. It took us some time to figure that out. But really, the beginning of Red Barn Farms and Red Barn Academy started with the passing of my little brother. And now it's grown into where, gosh, we've had hundreds of people that have come and interviewed and gone through the program. We've had graduates of the program, and we have successful outcomes where these individuals are back now as productive members of society, as fathers, as dads, husbands, and just decent human beings.
The amazing part about that, it was, I think, when you look at the Haws family, I highly doubt that when all this began, that your mother and father probably thought, this is where this is all going. There's no way like you guys had any clue.
No.
I mean, like you said, farming community, kind of just this mainstream life. I mean, you look at the typical American lifestyle, there it is. But then this tragedy, and we again turning that mess into a message. Mm-hmm. That had to be quite a conversation you had with your dad. As you're I could just picture you guys out there at the barn, like, well, what do we do now? Like, what's next? Because this can't just be like a chapter in our story. This has to be a completely different volume now. Like, that is wild. And watching again, it's funny because it just seems like it's always been, but just watching the exponential growth and just the maturity of the program. I mean, from meeting you first as a bachelor to now you're married and have a kid and
one on the way.
Yeah, see, congratulations, man. It's just wild how life changed. I mean, if you look back now and you're like, no idea why, how, when, or what the reasons were. The fact of the matter is that people in recovery, once they decide to shift gears, they are able to do extraordinary things because you're creators. I mean, at the very core of all of us, we create. I mean, remember when we didn't have any money, any transportation, we really wanted to get high?
Yeah.
We found a way. Now, you take that same principle and apply it to something positive, there's nothing that can stand in your way, despite the fact that there's adversity. It's like you've done harder things. So I'm just kind of blown away that your family would not just only dedicate their land and their time and your energy, but their whole life into a situation that no one probably forecasted would be part of your future.
No, in fact, I remember my mother saying to my father, Rich, why are you building that little red barn on the west side of Farmington?
Really?
Oh, yeah. That was back. So the barn was built in 2008 and we lost Dustin in 2012. So yes, as we're looking back and connecting the dots, it's easier to connect them going backwards and seeing how everything lines up. It was very fortuitous. It probably came from some guilt and shame is where that really came from. In order to honor my little brother, I see my little brother in every one of our students.
Yeah.
We have 60 students currently enrolled in the program today, and I see a piece of Dustin in every single one of them. And I can't help but think that Dustin, wherever he may be, whatever you believe, is cheering, is happy. Because it's not just these individuals, but it's their entire family.
Yeah.
These are dads. These are husbands. These are individuals that have been homeless, have been incarcerated for a long, long time. So as I think about the blessing as a result of losing my little brother, and I will often say taking one for the team. He took one for the team because I wouldn't be here today. I wouldn't be doing the things that I'm doing. Red Barn certainly would have gone a different direction.
Oh, for sure.
And would not be the recovery center that it is today. But as I've learned, and you've learned in recovery, the best thing that I've ever done is surrender.
Yeah.
I fired myself as CEO of my life in 2012 because if you would have watched me and seen the jobs that I lost, the toes that I stepped on, you would have said, whoever's running that guy's life is out to destroy him. So I took a back seat. I got a sponsor. I surrounded myself with people a lot smarter, with a lot more experience, and I just asked for help. It was a new concept for me, realizing I didn't have everything figured out. I didn't know it all. And and one thing's just led to another. And where we're at today it's a miracle for individuals to come up and see the farm and see the campus and see how it's grown. It's a testament to the community we live in, the support we have here, and the need. We have such a huge need for Addict II Athlete, for Red Barn, for these types of alternative services, because sometimes, as you know, Blue, the work we do can be polarizing.
Oh my gosh.
And there's a lot of opinions, and especially as you start getting some notoriety and you start standing out a little bit, people have strong opinions.
Yeah. That's
about what we do.
It happened to Addict Athlete. When it first started, people are like, the 12 steps are the only way. And I'm like, no, this isn't a replacement. This is just addition to.
Yeah.
And the same thing with Red Barn. I mean, the thing that I loved about watching like the creation of the Red Barn was, as we kicked off Addict II Athlete, I bumped into that. But then I remember hearing your plans about, and I remember I was standing there at the barn and you were showing me, and I remember you saying, you see all this land, this is all my family's. And do you see that new commercial complex over there? And you were showing me all this. I'm like, holy cow. And the way that you introduced the Red Barn, and fix me if I'm quoting you wrong, But your goal there was to say, what we're going to do is when these things are sold and whatnot, like we're going to have some ability to put some of these folks to work, to teach them how to integrate back into life, to give them the skill sets. And I remember you saying something to the tune of like, they'll build all these commercial properties, but we'll be responsible for the landscaping and we'll help do this.
Yep.
And I've watched you do this, and it is such a different model to most mainstream treatment, where you come, you spend 90 days in your room, in a group therapy room, and in an individual therapist's office, and you go home. That is not what you created. You created something that was so out of the box, and there was a few like you, but not comparison to what you guys had. Walk us through a little bit about your mindset in building the Red Barn, because it's unlike a lot of other programs out there. And I think, again, that is a blessing that not a lot of the traditional programs get, because you saw value in the time, the investment, the education, and again, just the compassion for the person seeking help, not just to come to spend insurance money for a couple months, but to say, we're going to give you tools for the rest of your life.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's a great question, Blue. It was really important in the beginning. There were some key principles. We wanted it to be long-term. Mm-hmm. It had to be long-term. When I first started Red Barn, because of my own insecurities, it was only a 1-year program. Today, it's a minimum stay is 2 years.
Even 1 year. It was like, what?
I didn't want it to be 2 years. I thought no one's going to want to stay that long. And the only comparison I had was really my church mission for 2 years in South America. And I thought, okay, well, maybe they can wrap their head around it. So I bumped it up to 2 years after about a year in. It needed to be free to the family. We were part of the culture where the rehabs and the treatment centers have become so cost prohibitive in order to get the support, that if you're not part of that upper class, then you don't have the same resources that are available. So it needed to be free, long-term free, and it needed to be based on hard work and discipline and structure. And so in the beginning, when we first started, I remember my dad came to me and he said, well, how are you going to pay the bills? You don't have insurance.
Had the same conversation here.
Right. Mm-hmm. And he said, what are you going to do? And I said, we're going to go mow lawns. He said, really? I said, yeah. So we made a flyer. We went out to the west side of Farmington, and we just said, we're a bunch of guys in recovery. Bunch of us. There was only 3 of us.
Right.
I brought them in pairs. My first 2 students I brought in was October 2017. I brought them in pairs because of my mission experience.
Yep.
And we went and mowed lawns. So you'd pay us $25 to mow your front yard. You pay us $50 to mow your whole yard.
Brilliant.
And that's really what started our property management company. And then we got into construction and just cleaning up job sites. I call it a construction company. We're just a cleanup company, and we'd go and clean up. And what we'd found is our classroom was out mowing lawns. Our classroom was on the job site. Our classroom was working in the chicken restaurant that we have now. That's real world. That's where our character defects bubble up and bounce up against each other.
Where they collide.
That's where they come. And I'll often say this, that if you actually paid money to come to Red Barn, you would pay for 2 groups twice a week, on Monday nights and on Thursday nights. And that's when we get together as a family and we address those character defects that bubble up. And we have very clear, direct conversations with each other. We get passionate. We call each other on those behaviors. We attack the behaviors. We don't attack the individual.
Yeah.
And what happens is over time, when your family keeps pointing those out over and over again, and then you're being penalized because we have dishes that you do as a result of falling short, that starts to change over time. And so instead of getting beat up for falling short, then once a month we get together, we call it a support group. And it goes something like this. Blue, I got some feedback for you today. You're getting up on time. You got a positive attitude. In fact, I even saw you help Steve the other day on the back of that truck, man. Dude, you're doing awesome. And what's interesting about that, it's more difficult for my students to receive that positive validation
100%.
Than to be criticized. So we hit them with both. And you do that for 730 days. You do that for over 2 years. In fact, the best part of our program is when the student decides to stay a 3rd year. The first 2 years to get out of a jail or prison sentence. The 3rd year, what I hear is I'm going to give back to the place that saved my life.
Yeah.
And what happens in the 3rd year versus what happens in the first 2 years is just tremendous. It's magical because now they're doing it because they want to do it.
Yeah.
To give back. And so our model, and it's not to undermine clinicians that are out there. No. In fact, I'm a clinician. I went and got my SUD-C. I'm trying to get it back again right now. But our program is for individuals that have been in and out of the clinical system for a long time. They've been to multiple treatment centers. Our average student, Blu, has been arrested 40 times.
I believe it.
Had been to jail 12 times and to prison twice.
Man.
Most of us have been to multiple rehab facilities. We need something different.
Oh, yeah.
We need an Addict II Athlete. We need a Red Barn. We need something as an alternative, because guys like me that go to rehab, and then when we fail after rehab, we say, oh, well, rehab doesn't work for us.
Yeah.
Well, I went for 30 days. I've been using drugs for 12 years. Yeah, 30 days probably isn't going to work for someone like me. So the self-sustaining model became very important to us, because now we're not beholding to insurance companies. We are licensed with the Division of Consumer Protection, which is a lot different than being licensed with DHS.
Absolutely.
And we have some very wonderful friends and supporters and colleagues on both divisions that are coaching us to make sure that we do things the right way.
For sure.
We are a public charity, which means we publish our 990 every year. We're a 501c3. We're very, very open and transparent. And that was an important part of setting up Red Barn.
Absolutely.
In the beginning, is that it is a community organization. It's not owned by the Haws family. It's all been donated now into the nonprofit. And so far, so good. So far, so good.
It's amazing, though. I mean, again, just giving them the tools, for 30, 60, 90 days, that's good. But to give them like the relationship that's going to last beyond the 1, 2, 3 years, that's where the real benefit comes from. And it's unheard of to have a program that is that comprehensive, be so, I guess, accessible. People probably don't believe it. They're like, come on, what are you really doing? What's really going on there? I've spoke to many people that are alumni from Red Barn, and they've all had the same consensus of how much life-saving, I guess, grace they were given. And it's really because they stuck around, because they felt something that they didn't get somewhere else.
Yeah.
And that's got to be, to a certain degree, better than any Google review you ever have, right? I mean,
it is. It's a very, we're not a lockdown facility. So some of the guys that come and it doesn't work out well for them, they'll split, right? We'll help them get back to jail or incarceration. A lot of times there's warrants that are issued for them to get picked up. But for the most part, those that stay in the program and weather the storm, that's why we say to the guys, just let Red Barn wash over you. Just stay one more day, fight one more day. And that one day turns into 2 weeks, then to 2 months. And then before you know it, they've put in 2 years. And the greatest blessing that I receive as the executive director is when they decide to stay a little bit longer.
Yeah.
Because now
they're choosing to.
Now it's their decision, and they really do believe in not just Red Barn, but recovery. They believe in integrity. And the cool thing about working with this population, you've probably noticed this, is integrity is a drug.
Oh, yeah.
When these guys get a little taste of it and they're on a winning team, they want more, and they want more. And for a lot of these guys, it's the first time they've been on a winning team. So they're the guys, in our moving department, I joke around. They may have been some of the guys that might have come in your back door late at night and stole your stereo. Now they're coming in your front door. They're saying, yes, sir. No, sir. I looked the other day. I think we have over 700 5-star reviews.
Amazing.
We don't even have a 4-star review. These guys are working so hard to get their lives back and balance the scales, and they really do like what's happening to them.
Oh, yeah.
And they want more of that.
I think you're right. I'm glad you said that, the way that you described integrity. I think that's one of those things that once you catch it, you don't want to lose it again, because you know how precious it is. But for you on a personal line, I mean, again, I've watched you over the last 10 years, and your heart and your soul's gone into to all of this. And I know there's been ups and downs and all arounds, but you've also had a personal life too, man. And I'm curious, I remember when you got married, did she know how much all this meant to you?
Probably not.
You know what I'm saying?
Probably not.
Because I remember watching, you, Mike, you've always been a humble guy, and that's what's been cool is just, your willingness to learn and to ask and to seek. And I got that vibe from your family too, when I met them. And I'm curious, did she know she was signing up for this?
Probably
Did she realize how much time and energy and resource that her husband was going to need to distribute?
No. And I know you can relate to this with your beautiful spouse. My wife, she's incredible. We've been married. We're coming up on 10 years. We've known each other for 15 years. So she knows the other side of Michael Haws. She, next to my father, has bailed me out of jail and dropped me off at the emergency room more than anyone else.
Oh, man.
So she knows that side of it, which I think is a benefit because she sees where I'm at today.
Right.
And if I say, hey, I got to go hang with the guys and we're going to a meeting, great. Because she would much rather that be the situation than the old behaviors that I was engaged in.
For sure.
In my previous life. But she's amazing. She's 8 months pregnant right now with our second little boy. Ace is his name. So we've got Maverick, and now I've announced it. Now Ace will be here in January.
Awesome.
And she's just an amazing mom. She works part-time for the Jazz. So she runs the Jumbotron, and she works for Real Salt Lake and runs the Jumbotron out there. But she's very supportive. I mean, here we are, the holidays for Thanksgiving, and we have her family in town. And so we're doing Thanksgiving at our house. We're doing Thanksgiving down at Red Barn. We're kind of all over the place. And she's wonderful. She's very, very supportive. My son, I've got a 5-year-old Maverick.
Yeah.
His favorite thing to do is to go hang out with the students down at Red Barn. And some people will question that and they'll say, well,
not me.
Look at I'm like, yeah, I know. But they're toasted marshmallows to me, my guys. They're just crispy on the outside and they're warm and soft and gooey on the inside. And so Maverick doesn't see any difference. A lot of my guys are tatted up and look a certain kind of way, but he knows their heart and he loves hanging out with them and being down at the farm. So just like Addict to Athlete, Red Barn, it's my life. I hang out there all the time. We have events. It's really 24/7 just because that's when the guys, the weekends and evenings, that's when we're there at the house hanging out together. It's their home.
Dude.
So yeah, I'm very, very, very blessed to have my wife, Tawny. She's unbelievable. I'll always be trying to make it up to her.
And I love that, man. And I'm with you because, Addict Athletes now, we're moving into 14 years. And the crazy part about it, all my kids grew up in this. And so they did the same thing. They ran next to these people. I mean, I was, my oldest daughter, Brooklyn, was in the car when I got the news that one of my dear athletes passed away. And she had to, unfortunately, ride shotgun as I had to put on the clinical hat and try to navigate through this. And she knew Carly very well. Yeah. And so our kids, they have a different perspective on this stuff. Like the same reasons I fell into addiction will not be the same reasons my kids will. Does that make sense? Like they understand this and be able to see people for who they authentically are, not for a trait or a habit that they have. I think that's where the real change occurs. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Like what a gift too, brother. I don't know. What's it like being a dad though? It's kind of a crazy thing, isn't it? It's like,
oh, bro,
holy cow.
It is the best thing in the world. It has given me so much that I was lacking in the area of patience and understanding and compassion, because I had one of my board members ask me this the other day. He says, how do you reconcile with some of these students that graduate and move on and they don't have anything positive to say about Red Barn or they're upset about something? And I just said, Dad, I said, the greatest gift that I've ever received is to be a parent. I said, I'm just their parent. That's all I am. I said, Dad, I'm never going to stop asking you for stuff.
Exactly.
My son's never going to stop asking me. And that's okay. I don't want him to stop. You're my dad. Like I can go buy my own sandwich, but take me out to lunch. You buy me a sandwich, Dad.
Yeah.
I said, that's how I look at all my students. The same way that I'm their dad. Sometimes they're just spoiled, rotten kids. And again, I have to remind myself, a lot of my students have been homeless their whole lives.
Yeah.
They've been incarcerated. They don't know how to be a friend. They don't know how to be a brother. They certainly don't know how to be a dad or a husband. And so as I take all that into account, I just see them as just honestly, bro, they're a lot like my 5-year-old Maverick. There's not a lot of difference between my 5-year-old and my 45-year-old student. The emotional maturity is about the same.
I agree.
So I love it. I just go from home to work and I'm kind of doing the same thing at home that I'm doing at work. I'm a better listener today. I'm kinder. I'm along for the ride.
I love it. I love it. And for you listeners, the one thing I want to also let you guys know is that, here on the Addict Athlete Podcast, we always like to dip into the athletic aspects of what recovery's brought. And there was a time, and we talked about before we hit record, that you showed up for several of our events and runs. And I know you still do quite a few runs and things for benefits and charities up there at the Red Barn for running and whatnot. but you've completed the St. George, like half Ironman.
Heath helped me do that.
Yeah, brother-in-law Heath. Yeah, Heath
Shout out to
out
Heath.
there.
We love you, Heath.
He's down there living in God's country now. But tell me about that, because I'm always intrigued by people's desire to want to do something that pushes the envelope, because that's kind of what addiction did to a certain degree. But when you're training for, and from what I'm told, the St. George half Ironman is the most challenging event in Ironman. Like, in fact,
halves it is.
They had to, from what I've heard, is they had to move it from a full Ironman to a half because it was competing with Kona in intensity.
Yeah. So
So that's telling you something. So tell me a little bit about the lead up and why you even wanted to attempt that.
Well, honestly, it's a shout out to you, Blue. It's Addict II Athlete. I'm not a runner. Look at me. I'm a bit. In fact, I remember when I signed up for the Ogden Marathon. It's the only full marathon I did because of you guys.
Yeah.
I had to sign up because of my weight class as a Clydesdale.
Oh yeah.
Not a thoroughbred,
Yeah,
not
yeah.
a racehorse. I'm a Clydesdale. So I had that in my
The
head.
Budweiser horse, right?
I'm just the right? So really, it was the couch to 5K. It was the little elf run that you were talking about raising money for. That was the first 5K that I ever did. And you sparked an interest. I remember one time we were up at Red Barn and we were out for a run together, and immediately I went to go put my headphones in. And you went, whoa, Michael, we don't do that. And I was like, what?
Take them things out.
Take them things out. We're going to connect. I'm like, oh no, that sucks, man. I got to get my headphones in.
Yeah.
But it was all those little things that you taught me, Blue, along the way that now I teach my students. And that's what resonated with me. So then I started to connect with my guys out on the trail. And then we went up in the mountains. And then all of a sudden that turned into a 5K. And then it turned into a Spartan race. I think that was the first thing I ever did. We did a bunch of Spartan races with a bunch of guys in recovery because we were just trading up. We like to do hard things. I'm still kind of an adrenaline junkie. And one thing led to another. And it was funny because when my buddy asked me to do a triathlon, he said, do you know how to swim? I said, well, I've got my swimming merit badge from Scouts. Does that count?
It's been a day or two ago.
He goes, let's go into the pool. So we went to the South Davis Rec Center. We jumped in the pool. I went down and back and just about died. And I think I reached out to you. I said, bro, I need some help. I got this triathlon. You're like, oh, my brother-in-law, he'll hook you up. So I hired Heath to teach me how to swim. And he pulled off a miracle. The very first 1 mile swim I ever did was in St. George in Sand Hollow because Heath taught me. It was so funny because I remember sitting there one time and he said to me, he goes, so tell me what you did this week to get ready for our lesson. And I said, oh, I went out and swam some laps. He goes, you better not have. He goes, you don't know how to swim. He goes, stop swimming laps, man. I can't keep undoing all your bad habits.
That's awesome.
And so what I loved about Heath was it wasn't just the swimming, but it was the psychology and it was the confidence. And I remember one time him yelling at me going, what are you doing, Mike? Fight in the water. I'm like, what? I'm just swimming. He goes, no, you're not. You're fighting the water. And he goes, and you're going to lose every single time.
Yeah.
Until you can accept its majesty and its strength and its vastness. He said, you'll never learn how to swim. I was like, damn, this guy's good.
It's better than the merit badge.
Way better than the merit badge. Way better. So the whole athletic side of running and Spartan and all these different races, honestly, Blue, it's you guys an Addict II Athlete. And so as a result of that, that's what I've done with all my students. I take them all, we go running together. My new thing is yoga right now. So I take the yoga, and a lot of this has to do with you're responsible for a lot of that, Blue. So thank you.
Oh man, no, well, it was one of those things where it just kind of connected perfectly. I mean, watching you guys be the last leg of our pushing of race, and that was amazing. And
the county to county.
Yep. I remember coming over the viaduct there in Farmington, and just an amazing connection with people in real world. I mean, it's the relationships that you build, right? I mean, from Carla and Reese and Heath and all this stuff, it's like these are the real reasons. That's the real purpose of why I think we're here on this little ball of mud, is to connect and to build relationships. Don't you think?
I agree. I often will tell people about that at Red Barn, that it's about relationships. I believe there's 3 relationships. There's the relationship with ourselves, our relationship with others, and then with the universe or God or whatever that higher power is. And those 3 relationships is what we work on. Because for most of us, when we get to Red Barn, we don't like the person we see in the mirror.
Exactly.
So that's the first person that we've got to, make our amends with and get on the same page with. And as we bump up against each other and run into each other, and these shortcomings, usually based in fear and insecurity, start to bubble up, that affects our relationships. And over time, my students have developed these unhealthy coping skills, like a lot of us do,
right,
on how to manage and work with these relationships. And then ultimately, what I find is once they can look at themselves in the mirror, they start connecting with their brothers. Now they're more open to the universe. Now they're open to spirituality and this concept of maybe there is something out there greater than ourselves.
Yeah.
Because for the longest time, we have built, at least I have built this cage around me, and almost kind of like this barrier where anything vulnerable, anything that's going to make me emotional, I have to stay away from that. And so these big, tough, burly guys that show up to Red Barn, that's the first thing that we work with them on, is helping them travel that distance, right? The longest distance we'll ever travel between our heart and our head. That's the connection that we're trying to work with our guys. And a lot of times the way we do it at Red Barn is we'll do it with animals.
Yeah.
Because they've lost their interest in adults and, authority figures and things like that. So we use the garden and we use the animals really to break that down and help them to start to get in touch with some of those feelings and some of those emotions. And for some of us, it's been a long time since we've touched that soft spot.
Retraining the human experience to be able to feel again, I think, is one of the biggest challenges we have. And that's one thing I do remember too, when you were showing me about with the Anasazi walks, and you'd go out there and just the principle based awareness that takes place just for a simple stroll around a garden. Mm-hmm. And I remember thinking there's something bigger here because of stuff like that. It's that attention to the smaller details, I think, that makes Red Barn stand out so impressively to me, brother. But that's the thing, right? I mean, we started this conversation talking about your brother. And, before we wrap up, I need your thoughts on this. When I first heard this, I thought, go garbage. And it was kind of a funny thing because I was like you. I just got it's an LSAC back in the olden days, right?
Yeah.
And I got in that, and I was the same with you. I'm gonna save the world. And I remember sitting in a group with a bunch of these kids, and they had the speaker come out, and it was the president of Mothers Against Drunk Driving. And it was a guy, which was kind of funny. I'm like, that's what? I thought mothers were why is a dad here? And he said something that was stuck with me, 23 years later. And he said, there's this funny little thing out there called the rule of thirds. And he said, a third of everybody that has an addiction issue, drinking, drugging, what have you, 1/3 will make it. They'll get the help they need. They'll have their aha moment, and they'll be okay. They'll be fine. The next, third will be those who are in and out of jail and in and out of, programs and just kind of stuck, and they'll have moments of clarity and they'll have moments of sobriety, and then they'll relapse and they'll have addictions, but that'll be their life. And he said, the last third, we'll lose them. Like, that was circa 2001, right? And I remember thinking, baloney, because 2/3 of that suck. There's no way. Because here I was now, in recovery for several years at that point, thinking, well, if I did it, everybody can do it. Holy crap, man. Then we start seeing this opiate epidemic kick in, and now the fentanyl, and we're losing people left and right. I mean, now I remember you guys helped us when we first kicked off the awareness of how many people we were losing. We started with the 144. Yeah. I remember you guys got behind that too. And that was, 2015. Mm-hmm. Now we're at 302.
Is that where we're at?
And I'm like, you've got to be kidding me. But I remember thinking years later, like, then that means that one person that passed away, they've, to a degree, given us a gift, because now we get to at least be the one that makes it, or the one that's still here given the good fight. When you think about, the rule of thirds, like, what comes to mind? Because I know that your family would give anything to have your brother back. I mean, everyone that I've lost, that's lost someone, has felt that way. Like, I would give everything. But if we don't take that as, dare I say, a gift, and say there's got to be something that can come out of this tragedy, there's got to be a message that comes out of this mess, then it was for nothing.
Yeah.
So I'm curious what your thoughts are on being the ones that make it.
Blue, that's a great question. It's been my experience, that rule of thirds. It's pretty close. Mm-hmm. Now, it doesn't sit well with me.
No.
I keep wanting to push the envelope But if my little brother falls into that category of taking one for the team, he did. He took, I mean, we're not talking hundreds of people affected by his passing. We're talking thousands. And when I go to graduation and I see not just my students that are excited, but their kids and the families and the community shows up, and AP&P shows up, and the sheriff, everyone, I'm like,
the judges are like, what the heck?
Yeah, this is a day of celebration. And we wouldn't have had that day of celebration had we not had at the time a tragedy take place. And so it just reminds me that I'm not in charge.
Yep.
It reminds me that there's a bigger play here. There's a bigger picture here. I am grateful for the Dustin Hawses and the Carleys, and I've had a couple of them come through my program because those are all teaching moments, right? And I get to tell my students, look, this is what happens. We get to live vicariously. And I tell my guys, I don't want to come to your funeral, but I will. I'll be there. I don't want to be there, but I'll be there. And I'll be there as a reminder for everyone else that this is life or death. And there's really not. I like it because there's not really a gray area.
Yeah.
You're either wearing the white hat or the black hat.
Got to pick which team you're playing for.
You get to pick. I don't know that many weekend warriors that are out there using fentanyl, and you either die or you get sober, or if you're lucky, you get locked up for a little while. And so you can think about it. So I would like to think that it shifts a little bit more like that. But where I'm at today, I'm a firm believer that those people, that's their story.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be.
No.
But it's going to be.
And as
much as I want someone, it's kind of like I say to guys all the time, it's that old cliche, you can lead a horse to water, right? You can't make him drink, but you can make him thirsty.
Oh, yes.
And we make recovery very sexy. When we go to the jail, they're like, what are you going to talk to the guys about? We're going to make recovery very sexy. We're going to make them want what we have. Oh, okay. Because it's awesome.
That's brilliant.
Recovery is awesome. And so, that rule of thirds, I know we've talked about that before.
Yeah.
And it's a very interesting concept, and it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. And I'm with you.
But I think it drives guys like us. It drives us to say, nah, I'm going to push the envelope on that. I'm going to sway that percentage a little bit because I can. Because I can have a little impact on the 60 men that I'm working with. And I know those 60 men then can have an impact on their families. So what I say is go to your own zip code and make a difference in your own zip code. If you can't do it over the world or in your state, just go to your zip code, go to your neighborhood, start with your family. Start right there, and then that ripple effect is what catches on. And that's what we're experiencing in our community. It's
beautiful. And before we hit record, we were talking about this in Utah. We're very lucky because we have programs that are grassroots level. We have guys with passion and families that have heart like the Red Barn. And a lot of states don't have this.
No.
And so, if you're living in that beautiful state of Utah, you guys are lucky. Take advantage of some of these resources. They're not inaccessible. I mean, we talked about Addict Athlete having chapters all over. Red Barn Farm is right here in the middle. I mean, they're not challenging to get to. You just got to make the commitment to get there.
Yeah.
Correct?
Right. Well, and sometimes pain is the ultimate motivator.
It's a good motivator.
Oh my guys, go get some more pain. We're still going to be here. Go get one more divorce. Go get one more bankruptcy. Just don't die.
Yeah.
But go burn everything down and then come back. And then we'll help.
And then we'll got you.
We got you.
Absolutely. Well, brother, how do people find the Red Barn? I know you're on socials. What's the best way to look you guys up so they can get a little more information?
Just on the World Wide Web. Just
Red Barn. www.
Yeah, redbarnfarms.org. We're out there, and we're happy to be of service. We've got a chicken restaurant. Come eat our chicken.
Come
hire our movers. You're actually hiring the students and bringing them in and giving them an opportunity to give back. So
absolutely.
It's a win-win.
I love that. For the longest time, I thought your name was Johnny Farmer too, by the way, because of that social handle.
Story.
Yeah. No, I don't know the story.
Oh, yeah.
I have no idea why you called yourself
real quick,
that.
just as a quick little wrap up. When we were starting Red Barn, this would have been back in 2012, 2013, my little brother came to me and said, Michael, if you're going to be a nonprofit, you're going to have to do marketing on social media. So he said, let's do your social media. And I said, well, I'm not real excited about Michael Haws on Facebook because of my pictures and old behavior. He said, well, let's just come up with an alias. Let's come up with something new. I said, all right, cool. He said, what's your middle name? I said, Johnny.
Brilliant.
Said, and you work on a farm. Let's just call you Johnny Farmer.
Brilliant.
So I launched Johnny Farmer because I wanted that lifestyle of Michael Haws to go in the background. And it just started to bubble up. And I used to explain it to everyone, but now it's just when people call me Johnny Farmer, I just respond.
It's the same, one and the same.
Yeah, one and the same. But it was really an alias or a pen name to avoid Michael Haws. And then it's just grown into something, especially in the recovery community. A lot of people know me as Johnny Farmer.
I love it, man. In fact, it was funny. I remember I tried to make, like, wait a minute. That's the same guy. I'm like, okay, I got you. Dude, that's genius though. Again, that's just reinvention, right? It's like everyone can have another starting line.
Yeah.
Yeah,
you can start over. We can all start over.
Absolutely. Athletes, you've been well fed. We'll put the Red Barn information there. Mike, thanks for jumping on with us today, brother. Again, long time. This will probably be, one of many in the future, but we'll go ahead and get the picture there. But yeah, really, I think being able to reach out for some help is just a phone call away. Jump on the website, check out the Red Barn, jump on addictathlete.org for more information. Athletes, the goal is again to get a team behind you, so you're not out there alone. No one finishes alone. Because the goal here is to turn your mess into your message.